Welcome in to the latest edition of the Pump Fake. I'm Jarrett Bailey. That's my friend Eric Edholm of NFL Media. It's good to see you, buddy. We haven't done anything like this since like Thanksgiving.
Is that right? Yeah, I was gonna say. I know I ran
Green
into you
bean
a couple
casserole.
times, but what'd you say?
The green bean casserole.
Oh, that's right. Yes. How could I forget? Yeah. That's right. I guess it's been that long, man. I mean, I think I've seen you a couple times since then, but no time to pod till now, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, we saw each other in Mobile and Indy, so it's so it's not like we've been complete strangers, but it's good to see you. How's your post-draft life going? I know that is a busy time for Eric Edholm.
It is, yeah. I mean, like it's been good. We had the schedule released too, and I had a couple longer stories to prepare for that, so that was a tense couple days. But yeah, it's been a lot of recuperation from draft season, which does take a lot out of all of us, and so haven't done the full court press on the 24 prospects yet, but we'll get there after I get a little vacation done, and we'll start on that route.
A little R&R away from football for a little bit. So I think that this is kind of a good time to kind of look ahead on the season to come in terms of teams that will be better than what they were in 2022, teams that'll be taking a step back from what they were in 2022. It happens every year where at least 4 new playoff teams come, which means 4 playoff teams from the previous year will be gone. And I want to start with a team that everybody except me seemingly seems to still be really high on. I don't get the hype around the New York Giants right now, man. I don't think they're going to be horrible. I think they'll be a team that's in the wild card race to the end. I did my game-by-game predictions for every team. I had them at 8-9, respectable. I just don't see them. When you pay Daniel Jones $40 million, I think that is strike one in terms of, this isn't going to go well.
Yeah, I mean, what were they? 9 and
8? 9 and 8 last year, I think.
9 and 7 and 1 or whatever it was. Yeah, I mean, it was, terrific season. And I mean, the schedule really did line up for them. That was one of the things when you looked last season, you said to yourself, they're playing a pretty easy slate. Now, granted, other NFC East teams were too, but I thought with a better coaching situation, motivated Daniel Jones, motivated Barkley, you could have a bounce back season. I think I predicted 7-10. So, seeing them drop to 7-10 this year or 8-9 or whatever wouldn't be a complete shock, especially in the East. I mean, Dallas is good, Philly is good. I think Washington is, at least defensively is very capable. They beat
Washington is the wild card in all of this because depending on how good or bad Sam Howell is, they could be 4-13 and contending to get Drake May or Caleb Williams. They could be a sneaky wild card team and finish like 9-8 and get that 7. It all depends on what Sam Howell does.
I agree. Or
Brissett, whomever it may be.
I mean, I've gotten a sense lately that maybe the optimism or the hope that Howell's going to just take the job is maybe a little premature. And I don't know, just talking to a few people around the league, I thought, what do you think? Could this kid be the one? But I think he's going to have to go through a legitimate battle. I really think that they're going to go through that there. But yet the receivers certainly can play. I think they'll have enough juice in the backfield. Offensive line is, a question mark. Tight end is a question mark, but I really think that it's like you said, if that quarterback position isn't a liability and the defense plays up to the level, I think it can with a resurgent, Chase Young, perhaps. I'd be a top 10 group on that side of the ball.
And I do want to propose this as well, because going into the 2022 college football season, everybody pegged Sam Howell as being a top 5 overall pick. Right. And then he has a little bit of a down year. I mean, but at the same time, all of his good players had gone to the NFL at that point. His numbers take a little bit of a step back, but overall still a fine player. I just don't get why we do this in college and scouting and whatnot, where a guy who played really well sophomore, junior season takes a little bit of a step back senior year, and all of a sudden, he's horrible. We don't do that at the NFL level. Like if Patrick Mahomes throws like 30 touchdowns next year and, a middle of the pack guy, let's say Jared Goff throws for 32 again, no one in their right mind is going to say, Jared Goff's better than Patrick Mahomes. So why do we do that at the college level? That's my defense of Sam Howell. He was a guy who was projected to go really high overall. It's like I think he'll be okay. I'm not saying he's going to light the world on fire, but I think he could be something for Washington in that sense. We'll stick with that division real quick because the Cowboys are also kind of a little bit of a wild card here with Kellen Moore gone to Los Angeles, Mike McCarthy now calling plays. I just feel like we've seen this movie before in Green Bay and how this is going to end. As you hear apparently a freight train go by my home. My goodness. Jesus.
That was
Lord.
Jerry Jones's bus. He's coming after you. He heard what you said, man. He's
like Beetlejuice. If you say Cowboys enough times, he just appears. Goodness gracious. But what are your thoughts on the Cowboys right now? Because they're a team that it feels like every single year it's like, oh, this is the Cowboys' year, but they fail to get past the divisional round each time around. So what are your thoughts right now on Dallas?
Well, right before you called, I was working on them. I'm making the list of the teams with the fewest question marks, or the most complete rosters, I guess is how we're phrasing it. But they're on the list. They're in the top 10, in my opinion. There's no question about it. I'd be shocked if they didn't make someone else's similar list. So, but the questions are on the offensive side of the ball, in my opinion. I mean, Dak, I don't think can afford to miss another 5-game stretch. I mean, Cooper Rush was great, but I don't think we're going to strike lightning twice in the same spot if that were to happen again. The running back spot worries me with Pollard coming off an ACL and no true number 2. I mean, look, the Deuce Vaughn story could be great, but I don't see him as a complimentary guy to Pollard in that respect. So, and from what I've heard, I don't think Zeke is an option to come back. You never know. It could happen. But, I mean, one more body there. Tight end, maybe they are okay there. But offensive line still didn't exactly figure out who the left guard is going to be. There's just enough things holding me back, especially after a year when Dak had the interception problems that he did, seemingly 1 or 2 every game down the stretch, that I have trouble sort of saying, oh, yeah, this is the year. But at the same time, I can't ignore them. And that defensive group is going to be probably a top 5 or 6 unit now, 3 straight years running. So, adding Mozzie Smith to the one position you could have quibbled with was defensive tackle and that run defense inside. I don't, unless they have a rash of injuries, I'd be shocked if they weren't very good defensively or excellent in that regard. So it comes down to Dak in the offense again. I know they got Brandon Cooks, but it's got to have more than that, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say the offense just lacked juice last year.
That's
like outside of CeeDee Lamb, what did they have that was just like that explosive playmaker? They didn't have one.
Yep.
So I think getting Cooks as like the solidified number 2 guy definitely helps, and then we'll see who they, how they go about filling any other needs. Sticking in the conference, the NFC North seems to be going through a wind of change in terms of how they'll stack up. The Detroit Lions seem to be the odds-on favorite to win that division. I like that. I mean, they were very aggressive in terms of, all right, we recognize our secondary was putrid. Let's go get a bunch of really good free agents and fill in those gaps. They trade away Jeff Okudah, realizing, all right, this probably isn't going to work out too well. I'm enjoying what I'm seeing from them. Obviously, the Jameson Williams suspension for the first month and a half will set their offense back a little bit, but I love what they did. I know that everybody criticized their draft a lot, but I think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a good player. I think that Jack Campbell is going to be a good player. Do they overdraft them? Maybe. But I like what Detroit's doing right now. I like what Chicago's doing right now, too. I think that these are going to be the top 2 teams in that division, and I think that we see a Vikings team that is still rebuilding defensively and saying goodbye to a lot of veterans, and a Packers team that's just a ginormous question mark depending on what they get from Jordan Love. I think that the NFC North might be the most fascinating division in the entire league right now.
I agree. 1 through 4. I mean, you could certainly at least make a case, even if it's an outside chance or, kind of a long shot for every team in the division to win the division. And you can make a case for almost any of them finishing 4th. I'd be shocked if the Lions were a 4th place team, but you get the point that there's enough variety and different combinations there that you could envision that, no team is stacked, at quarterback. Like we obviously have guys like Kirk Cousins, who's a mainstay, and Goff is settled in as that nice tier 2 kind of quarterback. But, no superstars right now, at least. We'll see with Love and Fields. There's at least some promise and excitement there. I mean, I'm with you on the Lions. Obviously, Campbell fits exactly what they're looking for, but it was also a position I didn't think they needed to draft. That was just interesting to me. Brian Branch feels a need for sure. I thought that CJ Gardner-Johnson was, like a free piece that they said, let's just get a weapon and figure out what to do with him. And Cameron Sutton was the quarterback, cornerback number one that they probably needed. So, yeah, I think you could just go down the list. They really checked off a lot of stuff. I thought maybe defensive tackle would be on their shopping list, but hard to believe they won't be improved defensively. And yeah, I really think it really does just sort of come down to who can complement Amon-Ra St. Brown on offense, and do they have their tight end now with Sam Laporta? But yeah, Chicago's going to be an improved team. I'd be shocked if Minnesota came close to their win total from last year, but I'm also not writing them off knowing what they can do in terms of scoring points.
Where do you fall in this whole Justin Fields debate thing? Because I feel like there's two camps. Either you think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, or you think he's going to be god-awful and that the Bears made a huge mistake in taking him. I think that there is a perfectly legitimate middle ground where level-minded people can lay and say, hey, he's got a lot of potential, but we need to see more of him as a passer, which is certainly, we can talk about the fact that last year his number one target was Equanimeous St. Brown, and that is definitely a point that is well taken. But at the same time, we need to see some growth from him this season.
I think so too. It's hard not to think that there isn't some kind of redeemable starting quality talent there, as if you factor in his passing and his running. And I think the best case scenario is that they can dial back his running enough while also still, featuring it as a big part of the offense, but enough where you protect him and also give him opportunities to throw the balls in those critical situations. Because really, no matter how any Bears fan wants to spin this season as like, oh, we could be a surprise contender. Heck, they could be this year's New York Giants for all we know, right? But I think the biggest question that we need answered is, with the ammunition they'll have and the incentive they'll potentially have to draft a quarterback next year, is Fields our guy? And that's what they have to do. And, obviously the biggest thing is DJ Moore, but Darnell Wright could help with that matter too. Figuring out who the best five are on offense. I didn't love that their run game theoretically took a step back a little bit. There's been some whispers that maybe Khalil Herbert isn't a ideal fit in the minds of the offensive coaches. I think he's a great change-up piece, but that puts a lot more on Dante Foreman. And so I don't know. It's not a complete unit, but I think there's enough there. Claypool in his second year, Mooney bouncing back, hopefully. And then also DJ Moore stepping into that number one role where you say, you come out of this season having a clear picture. We don't have it now, but I would lean more towards he's going to find a way to be successful than he is a flop.
I would agree with that. I think that there's definitely more upside than there is downside when it comes to him, especially with somebody of just the capabilities that he has. And look, we saw what happened when Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs. We saw what happened when Jalen Hurts got A.J. Brown. Not to say that, Justin Fields is going to be an immediate MVP candidate, but, there is precedent for guys of this stature getting a little bit of help and then taking off and showing what they're capable of. I'm excited to see what he can do in year three. Going from the NFC North to the AFC North, I think this is going to be the most competitive division in football. And a lot of people were in my mentions over the last week because, we always get one or two surprise division winners each year. And I was the one who was ballsy enough and courageous enough, Eric Edholm, to say that I think that the Steelers will win the AFC North.
I knew it. Yeah. Wasn't a shock to me that you said that, but please tell me, let's hear some reasoning.
So let me back this up, or let me get in front of this by saying, no, I don't think Kenny Pickett is better than Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson, for all the schmucks who have like hinted at that. No, obviously he is not. But
like Kirk Cousins was better than Aaron Rodgers last year, right? Exactly. Yes. Right. Sorry, I had to throw that in.
That's fine. Yeah. But I think that there is a lot of merit to having an elite head coach and a really good defense. And that's what the Steelers have always been. While, yes, there was a brief era where Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, and Antonio Brown put up a bunch of points per game, their defense also sucked at that point.
That's right.
Now, you get Minkah Fitzpatrick's great. TJ Watt is great. Cam Hayward is still playing really well. They bring in a Landon Roberts, Cole Holcomb to kind of shore up that inside linebacker spot that's been a big question mark for a little bit. Patrick Peterson, I think he still has one good year of, relatively good starting cornerback left in him. They bring in Joey Porter Jr. and Corey Trice in the draft, two guys who I really like a lot. Yep. And offensively, man, like, I think that what Kenny Pickett can be in this offense with Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris, they completely redid their offensive line, which looks to be really good this year. Darnell Washington, opposite of Pat Freiermuth. If they just run 12 personnel a bunch, good luck, everybody. Kenny Pickett doesn't have to be Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't have to be Joe Burrow. He can be Jimmy Garoppolo and just not mess things up. And as long as the defense lives up to its potential, you look at their schedule, it is not a difficult schedule, Eric Edholm. Yeah. I think that they could shock a lot of people. It's not necessarily to say that I think that they are a better roster or a better team than the Cincinnati Bengals. It's the fact that they play an easier schedule. They have an elite head coach. They have a good defense. And as long as the quarterback at least takes a step forward and doesn't mess things up, they can be an 11-win team and sneak away with a division title.
Well, before I drill down on the Steelers, you make an excellent point. If we pick someone to win 13 games and another team to win 11, it doesn't necessarily mean we believe the 13-team win is a better club or Correct. Would beat the 11-win team head-to-head. It simply means it's a function of the games they play, and here's how we think it could go, obviously, with a million factors yet to be determined. But still, you're right. I mean, those schedules matter. I remember the late great John Clayton. I sat next to him on a plane years ago, and I asked him. I was like, "What do we always overlook?" He said, "The schedule, my friend." And I'll never forget that. He just always stuck with me. And Clayton was right about a lot of stuff. But yeah, I think you're right about the Steelers. Obviously, I did kind of worry about some of the losses they had and some of the clearly defined needs. Like, are they going to be able to check every box off this offseason? But they've done a pretty good job of it. I mean, look, the draft couldn't have lined up much better with the first four or five selections, I thought. So, you add that plus their little tiny tiptoe moves that they make here and there, and still figure like you're going to get some bounce back seasons from some of the guys on the roster. I mean, obviously the receivers are fascinating, but you brought up another good point too with the 12 personnel. That's, maybe that's something that has to be developed a little bit there, but I really felt like this draft class could kind of help be part of a paradigm shift. We saw Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, the pair up there put together. Green Bay drafting 2 tight ends. Other teams taking that same approach. I think 12 personnel is back, baby. It was always my favorite personnel package when I was covering the old Cowboys teams with Fasano and Jason Witten and those guys. And
Anthony Fasano, what a shout that I didn't expect to hear today.
Yeah, that's my Jersey boy, baby. Yeah. No, I love that. And I always felt like it stressed defenses in terms of how are you going to match? You going to go big and expect run, or are you going to play light and have maybe a coverage issue against, 2 receivers, a back and 2 tight ends. So it puts defenses in a bind. If you have the right personnel, that can be special.
Yeah. And to just continue on the point of, better record not meaning better team. Yeah. In my projections, they would face the Bengals in the wild card round. I think they would lose.
Right.
I think they would be a one and done. That'd be cool. They get to host a playoff game. They aren't beating the Bengals twice in 1 year.
Yeah, so. And like Mike Tomlin every year, like it looks like they're going to finish Mobile 500 every couple seasons. He pulls them through. They win more games than you'd expect. They were outscored last year. They had a negative point differential. So it's another reason to believe, as you said, good.
Those 38-3 and 35-3 losses to the Bills and Eagles definitely helped that a little bit, I'm sure.
It sure did. Yes.
And that's the thing too, man. Like they were 3-7 at one point last year. Right. And granted, the back half of their schedule featured a lot of wins against, a Saints team led by Andy Dalton and a Falcons team that wasn't good and a Colts team that really wasn't good. But the Steelers, it's not like they were very good either. So I think that there's a lot to say for any Steelers fans that are always constantly calling for the head of Mike Tomlin whenever these sort of things happen. To be able to do that with a rookie quarterback, changing quarterbacks mid-season, I think that you can't say enough about how great he is and what he continues to do. And that's a big reason why I think they can shock a lot of people this year.
Hey, if Patriots fans can bitch about Bill Belichick, Steelers fans are going to do the same with Mike Tomlin. It's the broken record we love this offseason, every offseason,
what do you think about the AFC East, man? Because I don't think that the Patriots are going to be anything again this year. I think it's going to be a rinse and repeat of last season. Their defense plays well. Mac Jones stinks. The offense is the most boring in the NFL. They win 7 games, especially in that division now that features Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen. The Dolphins are going to still be relevant.
I'll say that they're going to be a better offense and a better overall team, but their schedule is wicked, man. I mean, they have no breaks in that schedule. I really do think Bill O'Brien is going to find ways to streamline things and make it. It was shocking. I just would do kind of a brief last week. I was kind of buzzing through some of the team's games just to refamiliarize myself with some of the, picking an early, a midseason game and a late game, and watching how putrid they were offensively and how much of a lack of design there was and a lack of thought into what they were doing. It really stunned me. And I would be shocked if we are at that point, even with Mac and his limitations. But you're right. It's hard to see with their offensive line being what it is and a respectable but hardly great receiver group, how they're going to take a major step forward on that side of the ball. And defensively, they just can't afford any drop-off whatsoever.
No.
And they were good. They weren't world beaters. They were very good, but they just have so many things facing them. Obviously, the Jets, you would theoretically say major improvement at quarterback.
You're not facing Zach Wilson twice a year anymore. He's going to give you 9 interceptions as a gift.
That's 2 wins right there. They've counted on him the last couple of years. It's right. So, Buffalo obviously has turned the tide completely on that rivalry. Miami has gotten the better of them, especially in kind of those early season matchups and a couple late ones too, for that matter. But
I'm going to say Bill Belichick's never beaten a Tua Tagovailoa-led team.
Isn't that crazy? And Tua becomes like the goal line running star against the Patriots. One of those funny developmental, odd more than funny considering his head injuries, but still, I mean, it's like, I think he has half his rushing touchdowns against New England. Yeah, I could be wrong about that, but it seems like that. But yeah, I mean, you could make the case that, the Bills at least patched some holes. The Dolphins theoretically got better with Ramsey and everything else. And, it's going to be tough sledding for New England.
I don't know what to make. I know what I make of the Dolphins. I think that they're I pointed this out on the Irish NFL show with Colin Cronin, and I went on a little bit of a rant. I'm not going to do it this time. I'm just tired of the Mike McDaniel shtick, man. Like, it's just annoying at this point. Like, I get it. Okay. He's a goof. He's weird. That's great. Hilarious and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think in this division, they're still the 3rd best team, but I think that the Jets are roster wise, that defense is still really good. You bring in Aaron Rodgers with Garrett Wilson and those guys. I think that they're still better than Miami. I think Buffalo is easily the best team in the division. I don't know, man. I think that Miami gets a little bit overhyped for 1 year where Tua had a respectable season and numbers that made him look better than what he really is. I think we've seen that with a lot of quarterbacks, especially over the last decade. Like Nick Foles had that year where he went 27-2 in terms of his touchdown and interceptions. Yeah. And Josh Freeman had a really good year with the Bucs that 1 year. Like, I'm not saying Tua is as bad as those guys. I think he's a respectable starting quarterback, but everybody's saying that he belongs in the conversation with Mahomes, Allen Burrow. I think that they're out of their minds.
Yeah. You got me thinking about maybe a summer feature, the best quarterback seasons by the worst quarterbacks or something like that.
You know what? I was actually pondering can we collab on something eventually?
Let's do it. Let's make a podcast or something, man. Let's
absolutely.
Do something with it. Yeah. I thought about that because there have been some crazy out of the blue years like that, right? I mean, whether Tua fits into that category or not, I personally think he takes a little too much guff online, but still, I completely recognize his limitations and the fear of what may never become. So, yeah, I mean, I will say in defense of McDaniel, when he was a nothing assistant coach with the Atlanta Falcons, quick story, went to the Super Bowls the last day of access. He was an assistant on that team. He's sitting at a table in the media room, in the corner where they stick the newspapers and the OJ and all that stuff. And like, nobody was talking to this guy. Nobody probably knew who he was. And I just sort of looked at him and like, okay, he went to Yale. Like, there's something about this guy. I just sat down. I had nothing that I had to do that particular day. So I said, hey, tell me your story. He is that way. Like, does he lean into this thing a little bit? Absolutely. But I think that's legitimately who he is. And the question is whether players will still embrace him after a tough season, whether that shtick still plays 2 and 3 years from now. As for the team, though, you have to. I'm in similar thinking as you. I don't think it's a bad squad at all. I think they're capable of beating some really good teams, but I also think that with the unknowns with Tua, kind of the still lingering questions on the offensive line and the defense, which, theoretically should be good. I wouldn't say it would be anything worse than solid, but it remains to be seen if it's a top 12 unit at this point, in my opinion. So I don't know. We'll see. Coming across the wire as we're talking here, Mason Rudolph to the Steelers, just seeing that as it's happened. So just wanted to let you know
that is now official. That he's back in Pittsburgh.
But yeah, I'm with you. I think Jets are second best and could make a run at number 1, depending on Rodgers and how that all works. But yeah, I would rank them Bills, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots as we head into, the cold summer months of no football.
All right. I will give you my quick rundown of my projected playoff teams from both conferences, and you can tell me how great I am or how horrible I am. Are you ready?
I'm always ready.
All right. Bills as the 1 seed.
Yep.
Chiefs at 2. Jaguars 3, Steelers 4, and then the wild card being Cincinnati, Jets, Chargers. I am very willing to open discussions about switching the Chargers and the Ravens simply because I think I'm just drinking too much of the Chargers Kool-Aid like I do every year, and then they always inevitably let me down. So if anybody wants to make an argument that the Ravens should take that spot from the Chargers, I will not argue whatsoever.
I would probably put the Ravens in that spot. Yeah, I mean, so your new 2 teams would be the Steelers and the Jets. So I have that right?
Steelers and the Jets would be the 2 new ones in the AFC.
Okay, and then you have 2 more in the NFC. Yeah, I mean, if there's a team that I think could maybe surprise this year, it's the Browns. I could see them, pretty favorable schedule. You assume Deshaun Watson isn't going to be horrible, although I guess there's no guarantee at this point. And they seem to have added to the positions where they could, say we're pretty bad last year, and I think held them back as a team. I have the Colts as maybe out, gunning for the playoffs.
Colts had a great draft and could be very fun.
I think if Richardson gives them anything and the coaching is obviously solidified, then you look back at how many games, even as terrible as they were, there were still a handful of games they should have won and did win, in surprising fashion like the Bills. So
I think that if all goes well for the Colts, that could be very similar to when the Ravens switched to Lamar middle of the season and won the AFC North. I'm not saying that they're going to win the South, but I think that, especially with Shane Steichen as their head coach, he's going to lean into what Anthony Richardson does well. They drafted really well. They got 2 of my favorite players in the draft, and Julius Brent and Darius Rush. I love what the Colts are doing right now. So I love that shout by you.
And Denver just as a Sean Payton boost of sorts. Like, it was a strange team last year. And Payton wouldn't shock me by going 9-8. I think the Vegas line is close to 8 or 9. So,
what's the over-under on games Ben DiNucci starts next season?
Oh my gosh. I have a Ben DiNucci 1-of-1 rookie card that I'm just like dying. When I see a transaction involving Ben DiNucci, I'm like, oh yeah, baby, here we go. This one's cashing in. Mama needs a new fur coat, so I don't know. I'm saying probably 12 to 15 is probably the high range. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe. Fair enough. Let me go over.
Try to go straight face.
Let me go over to the NFC. I still have it's pretty chalk when it comes to the top 2. I think Eagles 49ers are the definitive top 2 right now in the NFC.
Gotta be. Yeah.
The Lions is the 3 seed. And then in the South, I love what the Panthers are doing. I think that they might be a little bit of a shocker and win the South, just because that division's really bad.
All right, I'll start at the bottom and work up because I kind of have the Falcons, and I also recognize their limitations, and I don't. It's like we said earlier, it's more schedule and kind of how it lines up.
I like the Falcons roster. I don't like their quarterback.
I don't think Ritter's anything special. I don't think he's bad. I think he's just eminently replaceable. Yeah, but really the Saints. I mean, boy, as flawed as they were a year ago, still 7-5. Derek Carr has to give them an improvement. I'd be shocked if it didn't. And to me, of all the schedules I looked at, I thought theirs had. I wouldn't say it's the easiest, but it's certainly the most friendly in a lot of ways. Even with a couple speed bumps, I think they're going to win games strictly because of who they're playing right now. So, yeah, I mean, if their defense was good, capable last year, if you assume Derek Carr scores them another 60, 70 points this season,
yeah,
then I would have to think they win more than 7 games and more. They could flip that schedule. They could that record 10-7 or something. But yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you. I've gathered this sense. I don't know what this means. I was talking to 2 different people in the span of about 4 days. One of whom is not a conference rival or anything like that. And the Lions came up, and there was a lot of suspicion thrown out there as like, are we really, I'm paraphrasing here, but are we really elevating them to contender status because of how they played the last 8 games? It's a fascinating question. Obviously, they looked pretty bad early in the year before a remarkable turnaround, almost made the playoffs. But as you said, Jameson Williams, that defense has to come together. There's still the role to be figured out for Gibbs. He may not be instant coffee. There's still some things that could hang them up a little. Defensively is certainly the biggest thing, I think. But
sure,
I don't know. I'm doubting my instincts on Detroit and wondering whether we're all putting the cart before the horse a little bit. It's just a question, just throwing it out there.
My wild card teams. The Seahawks are the 5. I like what Seattle's doing. I don't think Geno's a long-term answer, but I think that he's proven that he can play respectable enough, and their roster got better. They've got a ton of weapons. So they're the 5. I should put Dallas at the 6 just because of the things you pointed out. They don't have too many question marks, and I think that they're still going to get their way into the playoffs just because it's not a deep conference. And then my 7 seed is I think the Bears can do this. I think that Fields takes enough of a step forward where they can win 9 games. And defensively, I think they've made a lot of good moves too with bringing in Edwards and Edmonds. Their secondary is still solid. I think Jaquan Brisker has a lot to offer. I'm liking what they're putting together. And like I said, this is not exactly a who's who of NFC football anymore. It's very thin when it comes to, it's a top heavy conference, I would say.
It is, right. You've got the obvious, big ones at the top of the Eagles and 49ers. Cowboys, I guess you could at least say could possibly be in that mix, but there's probably at least one major flaw or one something holding you back with almost every other team. I'm with you on Seattle. I like them. I still think the Rams, they have a really tough schedule, and I mean,
dude, outside of their 3 big stars that they have left, they are counting on 50 dudes.
Can you name, if I spotted you Aaron Donald, how many Rams defensive starters could you name? And this isn't like to test your football knowledge. It's to remind everybody, who the F are these guys?
Their linebacker, is it Ernest Jones?
Ernest Jones. Yep, that's right.
That is legitimately the only one I can name.
I heard that Bobby Brown might be starting at one of the end spots.
Bobby Brown, Boys to Men. Is that the right group?
Right. Exactly. We had Wanye Morris in the draft, and now we got that. So Christian Roseboom is a name that I saw. I'm like, wait a minute. I don't remember doing a whole lot of scouting of that guy. Marquise Copeland, I think. I mean, Russ Yeast. We're going to put a yeast in this. Sorry. But it just reminds you, like, wow, they have got a lot of unknowns on that side of the ball.
I think I can legitimately name 6 Los Angeles Rams. You got Stafford, Donald Cup, the easiest ones, Ernest Jones, Tutu Atwell still there. And I did a feature on Puka Nacua, who I like a lot, and he is now in Los Angeles. So the 6
needed another receiver,
Yes. Those are the 6 Los Angeles Rams I can name. If you are not a Rams fan and you can name if you can name 10 Los Angeles Rams, you deserve some sort of reward.
Cam Akers,
okay, Tyler Cam Akers, he's still there. Okay, that's 7.
Yeah, Steve Avila was their top draft pick, but after that, I'm just gonna start making up names and going Key and Peele on you or something. But yeah, right. I can't see Arizona being anything more than a 6-win team. I'd be shocked.
They're going to be starting David Blau for the majority of their season.
I'll be excited come draft time. They'll have all the ammunition in the world. We can talk about the future and speculate whether Kyler is going to be gone next year.
I was going to say, before we go, do you think that if they're in position at the number 1 overall pick to take Caleb Williams, do you think they take him and pull a Kyler Murray on Kyler Murray and trade him?
Wouldn't that be something? They have to, I think. I mean, look, I know the dead money is awful, but
we've seen
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's actually after next year. It's not, crippling, but It would not shock me one bit. I'm also worried about the head coach. I don't think Jonathan Gannon's been off to a great start. He gives me the willies. He scares me. Like I feel uncomfortable around him. I can't explain it. And if you're listening, Jonathan, I don't mean this personally. I just feel like there's something that just like it holds me back with this guy. And so I don't know. Maybe he's like the perfect tanking coach or something like that. I would never suggest that a team would ever do that, but they'll be in strong position to draft Caleb next year. Yeah.
We've got, what is it now? T-minus 3-ish months until the Hall of Fame. Less than 3 months now till the Hall of Fame game. So, I mean, we're inching closer. Yep. Eric Edholm, always enjoy talking to you, my friend. What do you have coming this week on thenfl.com?
Got that most complete rosters piece. I'll be submitting it later today. So maybe out tomorrow, I think, or something like that. So either Thursday or Friday, that should come out. And then I'm gone. I'm off the grid for a week. It'll be the first time I haven't written anything in a week plus since probably about the time I got hired. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a little recharge time. And then, yeah, like you said, mini camps, OTAs, pretty soon we're back at it again.
Are you taking any sort of mini camp, OTA, training camp trips when the time rolls around?
Don't know. I was going to try to go down to Indianapolis to check out Anthony Richardson and maybe do something on him. That's been at least tabled to possibly camp. So I don't know if that's going to happen exactly that way. Plus, I like to see when the joint practices happen. If there's one within driving distance, I try to make it if I can, either Detroit or Indy or Chicago, obviously, maybe Green Bay. Green Bay, New England is the one I'd heard rumored. I don't know if that's going to happen, but yeah, we'll see. If there's one fairly close and doable, I'll definitely try it, but probably no big tour this year.
I was going to say, well, if you want to take a trip to Latrobe with me, Eric Edholm, you are more than welcome to come to St. Vincent College.
I've never been. I always want, it's on the list. It's one of the few like remaining.
It's a good camp.
Old settings. Yeah. I definitely want to get there one of these years, and we'll see. I'll check the music calendar, see if there are any good bands playing by there. Maybe I can make an excuse to go. So.
I've been to a very select few within like the tri-state area. I've been to the Steelers. I've been to the Eagles. I've been to Washington. So I mean, I've been, yeah. So that'll probably be at least one trip. It's always good talking to you, buddy. Can't wait to do this more down the road, and maybe a fun podcast about random quarterbacks who've had great years. We'll put a pin in that.
I'll be starting my list tonight. You got it, man.
All right, buddy. Take care.
See ya.